Hello, how are you? Welcome back to Coffee with Temi. How are you doing? Today we're gonna have I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm going to be posting this on both the podcast and the YouTube channel. And as you can see, I have with me another gorgeous person. I am so blessed. I only know gorgeous people, hey, in spirit and physically. Before we go on, may I please ask that you subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, it's just up here. Yeah. Subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my podcast. It really helps me when the numbers of my followers or my subscribers grow. So if you haven't, please do it now. Today, we're going to be talking about women, law, and finance. Women, law, and finance as it applies to us. I don't want to say just African women because I've done a bit of research. I realized that some of these things we're talking about today, it's all women. We all do it. Maybe it's a genetic thing. Maybe we are programmed to be like that, but we'll find out. Okay. So today I've got with me Matlhodi Leteane, who is with Standard Bank. You're with Standard Bank now? Yes. Really new to Standard Bank.
Yes. Very new.
And it is such an honor to have someone who is well versed in the topic for today. Someone who is also a female. Actually, for the next 2-3 weeks, we're going to do things that have to do with women because we're going into May and it's Women's Day and I'm making it Women's Month. So we're going to talk about things that affect us as women. So we want to look at different things and we had this conversation. We don't think we're going to be able to finish today. Mm-hmm. So at the end, I would like you to say if you want a streamed one, yes, a streamed episode, or you can just send in your questions and we'll talk about it again. So, welcome, Matlhodi.
It's so good to be here with you. I've always wanted to do this.
So I'm the first one. Yeah. Yay. So, the first thing that I would like us to look at as women, one thing that we did talk about is don't be afraid of the law. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid of the law. I know this personally, something with my parent, and I remember my mom not wanting to go to court. She didn't, Mm-hmm. She was like, no, I'm not going to court. Nobody in my family has ever been to court. And really, there was no need to be afraid because things could have turned out differently. So let's start. I don't know anything about law, so I'm going to give it on to you. When we say don't be afraid of the law, how would you explain that to women?
I would say don't be afraid of the law because the law is there to protect you. And if you know your rights, you are able to protect yourself and those around you. Okay. So that's what we mean by don't be afraid of it. Don't be intimidated. Okay. All you just need to do is ask the questions. And by asking questions, they say there's no thing like a stupid question. So ask.
Are you sure there's nothing like a stupid question?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
Ask and have people explain to you what it means.
Okay.
And you find that once you understand, you're able to make better decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When you say know your rights, in what way?
We mean know how the law protects you. Okay. Know what the law wants you to know. Know what you can and cannot do. I must also mention that know your right also comes with knowing your responsibilities. Okay. It's just not about my rights, mm-hmm. but it's also about what I can and cannot do, and hence my responsibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we agreed we'll start with contracts. Mm-hmm. Read when they say, did you some things are in your contract, like the phone contract, for example.
Yeah.
Seriously, who has ever read Vodacom's old contract?
Yeah.
Step by step. I will never read it until we need to do something. And they say no, but it's there in so. I had this I will not name the bank, but you know yourself. You know yourself. So I had a safe deposit box, and the bank was robbed. I think it was due to negligence on their part, and everything went. And then when I wanted to claim, like, you guys are responsible for this, they told me that in section so and so, they were not liable for theft, for fire, so I'm like, why did I bring it? It was all because of this that I paid you every month. So in the end, I lost really valuable documents that I have not been able to replace, but it was there. So what would you say about contracts?
You know, the one thing as you're talking that just came into my mind is, being a lawyer myself, a lot of the language that is used in legal contract is difficult.
Yes.
It's not for the ordinary man. And that's why in South Africa, you know, a few years ago, we started this movement of plain language, where we write contracts in language that the ordinary man on the street can understand it.
Okay.
The second thing that comes to mind is, you know, what they normally call fine print. It's small. It's written in small fine print.
Tell me about it.
You can't read it, and for you to read it, you need almost a magnifying glass. But it is necessary that you read, that you ask questions, and if you don't understand, you say, "Explain it to me. I don't want this in here. Can you change it?" Because you can ask, and you know, hence the whole concept of negotiation comes from that. You should be able to say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, let's negotiate for what I actually want to see in my contract. The sad part is when you go and write or sign a legal contract, you are binding yourself. You're saying that I understood what is in the contract. And that's why it's always important that you don't sign anything without first reading it, making sure that you understand. And if you want something to be changed, you ask it for it to be changed.
Yes. I'm going to say the thing that women are thinking about now, or even a man. If we look at the phone contract, really, how many of it am I going to read? And I think maybe we think some things are not as important. It's just a phone, you know, I'm just going to put my signature on it. And then a phone contract, you can't take it away. They're pressuring you, or maybe not pressure, but they're saying you need to sign. Initial this page, initial this page, initial this page. And it's a lot. And just like, it's just a phone. But so if we think a phone contract is it's just a phone, are we putting that also into other things that we're doing?
I think so. I mean, how many people actually read an example? If all of us, you know, we enter into employment contracts with our employers, do you actually read it, or are you just too happy to get the job?
Well, I read how much I'm going to be paid and my leave.
But you also read about your responsibilities as an employer
after I've signed. I always read it after I sign. Yeah.
And then you're buying a car. Do you understand?
That's also a lot of reading.
It is a lot, but and this is when people are being taken advantage of, because you have not taken the time to actually ask, what am I getting into? Can I afford it? Is it what is right for me? So it is important that you read. And, you know, that's why we went to law school, so that we can help ordinary people who are educated, but not necessarily educated in the part of the law, so that we can help them through that process.
Do you think if I want to buy a car now, they're not going to allow me to take that paper away?
Well, have you ever asked? You have time to think about it. So,
okay, I've never asked.
Exactly. So the danger is, like I said, remember that I said, the minute you sign, you're saying that I understand, I agree to everything. But take the time. Somebody who is not forcing you to sign into this thing, the minute they say, no, you've got to do it now, then those for me are red flags. Okay. Why are you asking me to do it now without me going away to think about it, to read, so that I can come back with questions, ask the questions, let's change it. Even if I can't change it, understand why it's there and why and how I can even be protected, even though, you know, it's stated in a contract.
Yeah, because I was going to come to that. Some contracts you can't change. And I always think it's for the benefit of the person who has written the contract. It's always like that.
Yes.
It's like, well, you either take it or leave it.
Yes.
That's what. But one thing that you have said, which takes us to the next thing, is negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about negotiating, about learning to negotiate.
I always say, don't take the first prize.
Okay.
You're trying to bargain and somebody says, I'm selling this piece of item for 200 rand. I don't have to take the first prize. I must ask, can I negotiate for a better price? And many people are willing to negotiate. We don't ask, can I negotiate? We always take the first prize. People who know their worth, people who know how hard it is to get that money that they're going to be paying, they always negotiate. Many of us take the first prize.
Yeah.
That's offered to us. So my thing about it is I know my worth. I know that I work too hard for my money to be paying anything that someone just says, I'll give you this item for this amount of money. I must always negotiate.
Okay. And I'll use an example. I went into a shoe shop.
Yes.
And my friend I went with her and she bought like 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. And she said, I'm going to pay cash. How much are you going to give it to me? I was like, oh no, you can't do that in a shop like this. And the girl said the same, that no, that's the price, that's the price. She said, yeah, I could get your supervisor. Let's find out.
Yeah.
I'm paying cash. It's not on credit. How much are you willing to give me? Yeah. And she got a discount.
Yes.
I have never, ever in my life thought that I would get a discount from that.
Yes.
It's a shoe shop.
Yes.
What do you mean? And she got a discount. Yeah. And I said, I was actually couldn't say. I was just like, but she got a discount.
Do you know the question that certain merchants use? When you're eyeing an item, then say, how much is this? And they say, how much you got?
Oh, wow.
Because it means that they're willing to negotiate.
Okay. And so we need to listen.
You need to listen. And that comes down to when it comes to your finances, and today's topic is about women, law, and finances. Man, go out there and make sure that you're just not taking the first prize. You know your right. You know that you can walk into a shop. Just because the price is written there doesn't mean that there's a first price that I must actually pay for.
Okay. Know your worth. So it's not this know your worth. I know some women will say, yes, when it has to do with, let's talk about salary then. Yeah. When you say, I can only pay 10,000, like, nope. I can't do 10,000. For that, we're ready to negotiate. And I find even with that, just because you are stuck, maybe you haven't had a job for a while or whatever, don't also take, because this has happened to me, don't take the first prize. Just say, no, this is a bit small, or, something. Yeah. Can you do something? And sometimes you find that it might not be a lot from what we started from, but at least it's a little bit something. Yeah. And they know that you know who you are. You know what it is that you're worth. Okay.
That is true. That is very true. And many even employers, they can negotiate. Remember, there's always that room that I can,
between here and here.
We can play here.
Yes.
Beyond that, we're not willing to play. And even that below this, I'm not going to play. So understand that, as a job seeker, and I know that today's topic is not really talking about employment and what
but it's all part
of it's all part of women law and their finances. Understand, make your research. What is the job market offering for this job? But
that's a bit tricky now because, okay, so what's the job market offering? And you keep hearing that there is a difference between what the men are paid and what the women are paid for the same job. So when I say, okay, what is that? And you say, oh, here it's $15,000, but then you get to say, no, our maximum is 13,000, which means if I was a man, you pay me more. It's really, I think that's another topic because it gets me so worked up, like, no, because I think we already have to prove ourselves much more than they have to. So we're working harder just to be accepted at the same level. And then you pay me less, I can get all worked up about that.
I agree. Someone many years ago once said to me is that women never negotiate for better pay, but men, they always negotiate. So I have learned that I'm worth so much more, and that I'm not afraid to go and say, I think I'm being underpaid. Let's have a conversation.
Okay.
And many times when you do that, people come back and say, okay, let's look at this.
Okay. I hope that is still not within that. This is the women's salary. This is the men's salary.
I think, so we are fortunate that we're in a country where, there's a thing called pay parity.
Okay.
The difference between what is paid to men and what is paid to women. And we're fortunate that, there is intention in the part of many companies and the government to close this gap between the difference between what women are being paid and what men are being paid. Again, it comes back to, have you done your research? Obviously, many companies will tell you that salaries are confidential. Don't go talking about your salary with your co-workers or your colleagues. But understanding that in this role, it doesn't matter whether I'm a female or male, this is what I'm supposed to be getting paid.
Because we're doing the same job.
And we're doing the same job. And going to an employer and say, let's go back to the drawing table. But it's about understanding what you're bringing to the table. I think many of us, we just, because of maybe traditions, because of the many laws that used to hold women down, we've not fully understood what it is that we're bringing to the table. But I believe that is changing. I believe that is changing because when you look at the economy, the biggest participants in the economy are women. So why are we not asking for what we're worth? We must know our rights.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole lot of another conversation entirely on knowing our rights. Okay, so you said something about tradition. There are some things, not just one, but there are some things that people have accepted as the right thing or the only way to do a certain thing, but it's actually tradition. It's not the law.
Yes.
How again, I guess it comes to knowing your right. But how can women negotiate this? Because whether we like it or not, it's a man's world, especially in Africa. It's a man. Well, not if not everywhere. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a man's world. Because when I look at some of the laws, I'm like, if you were a woman, you never have agreed to that. You would not have done that. Because you know what it is for a woman. So how do we how do women I don't even know how to ask the question. How do we save ourselves from what is traditional way of doing things and what the law is about doing things? I'll use an example. A girl is abused. This is probably an international thing as well. And she's underage, or she just abused, whether underage or not. And the family said there's a way we deal with this. Here in Africa, there's a way we deal with this. But you don't want it to be dealt with that way. You want justice for yourself, or you want justice for your child, for your sister. How do we negotiate this or navigate this? Not negotiate now, navigate this.
I don't want to say it's tricky, but I think where we find ourselves, as you've mentioned in the African continent, is that, we've never differentiated between tradition and the law.
Okay.
We've never understood that just because something is followed as a practice in my family, does not mean that the laws of the country are actually upholding that. Again, I go back to the fact that that's why you've got lawyers who are there to protect the people. And, the one way that you need to be able to manage that, again, it goes back to understanding, what does the law say about this particular aspect of my life? The fact that the family is saying we will handle it in the family does not mean that they're actually looking out for the rights. It could be that they are looking to maintain the reputation of the family. At your own expense. And that's why, with programs like this, conversations like this are needed, that when it comes to question of abuse, physical abuse, any form of abuse, will always go back to the fact that the law of the nation, the law of the country, does not stand by and allow people to be
So,
abused.
but it's a tradition.
Yes.
Yeah. I find some things happen to women, and I cannot understand how another woman will help in holding that tradition down. And I know it's because some of them will say, well, it happened to me, it happened to my mother, so that's just the way it is. But that's it. That's just the way it is a tradition. Or it might not even be the tradition. We've come to accept that's the way it is. Meanwhile, there's a law that can protect us.
But I also believe that African tradition in its purest form does not condone abuse of women.
No.
It doesn't. It actually protects those who are vulnerable in our communities. It's just pure evil that we're allowing things to happen all in the name of tradition. But it is not really tradition.
No.
And so it becomes important that people are having these conversations, that, what we've come to accept for a very long time as tradition is actually not tradition. And that's why you've had in South Africa, as an example, a movement where you've seen a lot of the things that we've come to accept as tradition actually being questioned.
Okay.
That's why you've had many laws that have been passed in our country that are seeking to protect women.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, we took abuse as tradition, which is not tradition. Pure African tradition does not stand by and allow women and children to be abused. That is not true.
Yeah, you look after your wife, you look after your women.
Yes.
Yeah, you look after your women. Yeah. Okay, now that we're on tradition, let's go to marriage law. It actually feels like we're going through so many things so quickly. So please leave questions, your thoughts, and we'll come back to address. She's agreed she will do another one. If we have to do a series, then we'll do a series. But we just felt that these are things that we need to talk about. So we might just be looking at it on the surface, but it's not because we don't want to dwell in it, delve into it, but because there's just so much to say about everything. I was saying earlier, I didn't know until I came to South Africa that there were different kinds of marriage. When I say that, as in you could marry in community of property, you could marry in this, or they could even keep your name. I remember, and that's the woman. I remember a gentleman who got married, and the wife was very, for us, progressive, and she said she was going to keep her surname, and the husband agreed. Oh my word! All his friends were like, "It's so stupid. What kind of nonsense is that? She's going to keep her name. You see the husband in she's who's wearing the pants in this family? Is it this girl? Is it this?" But her husband was fine with it, But for me, I didn't think it was a thing that you could decide to keep your name, And I used to think once you marry, everything is everybody's. It belongs to everybody. But take us through, because now I know there are different kinds of marriages.
Yeah. So in South Africa, we've got 3 marital laws. So when you get married, ideally before you get married, you must understand the type of marital law that you want to apply to your marriage. So we've got 3.
Women, listen.
We've got marriage in commute of property. We have marriage out of commute of property without accrual. We have marriage out of commute of property with accrual. So let me explain this.
Thank you.
So marriage in commute of property means that when I get married, me and my husband, what he owned and what I owned before we got married is brought together, and it's 1.
1 + 1 makes 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? And that means, sadly, even the liabilities.
Yes, I found this out like 1 hour ago, that if he's in debt, then I'm in debt as well.
Yeah. So it means the assets and liabilities. Now, me and him, we're now responsible for this. So if he goes and gets into debt, guess what? The law says
both of us are in it.
Both of us are in it. So that is marriage in commute of property.
Okay.
Then you've got marriage out of commute of property without accrual. What that means is I keep what I had before marriage. He keeps what he had before marriage. Should it happen that the marriage is dissolved, that is through a divorce or through death, I've kept what is mine and he's kept what is his.
Okay.
And then,
but no, you said the things we had before we married. What happens to the things that we did together? Or do we, throughout the marriage, everybody has to keep their own stuff?
Everybody keeps their own stuff. And then you've got what is called marriage out of committed property with accrual. So that means that I get married, I keep my 1 million, and he keeps his 1 million.
Okay.
During the marriage, I grow my estate to 2 million. He grows his estate to 1 million. When the marriage gets dissolved, I must share the difference, my growth, I must share that with him. And notice, I'm saying the women, because I'm now punting women making more monies, right? Yes. And so if I've made 1 million extra during the marriage, that 1 million extra, I must now share that with him.
Does that apply to him as well?
It also applies to him as well. That is called what is called marriage out of committed property with accrual. And it is important that before people get into that contract of marriage, they have asked the questions, they have looked at their circumstances, and then they have determined what works for me and what does not work for us. And you don't have to go into things and accept things as they are. Then I must also explain another concept.
Yeah.
If we get married and we've not asked questions, we've not had a discussions, there is a default marital law that applies. That is incommitted property, because we've not made a choice.
Okay.
For us to have been able to make this choice, we must actually to say we want to get married out of committed property, whether with or without accrual, we must actually go sit before a lawyer who will then
that was going to be my next question.
Okay. Who will then put together a contract that says so and so are getting married. They are choosing to get married out of committed property with or without accrual. And that gets to be a contract that we enter into before getting married. If we don't have this conversation and we don't go to a lawyer before marriage, by default, South African law says you're married in committed property. And sadly, many people find themselves in the situation where we never had the conversation. They never had the conversation.
Because it's love.
Yes. They never asked the questions and things happen. And let's be honest, life happens.
Yeah.
We don't go into thinking that things are going to get ugly, but things do get ugly.
Sometimes,
and you find yourself having to share your pension fund at work.
With even your pension fund.
Yes.
Read the contract.
Yes.
Read
Ask
the
questions.
Contract. Eat my lips. Read the contract.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my word, your pension fund.
Your pension fund. And you have to share it. And that's why, when a marriage is dissolved by death or by death, it's often, the executor will come in and the marriage will have to be the marriage is automatically dissolved by death. The executor will come in and they will first pay the assets of the liabilities of the estate. And then I'm now jumping. So if the spouse who's passed away left a will, the assets will be divided according to the will. But let's take that the marriage is dissolved by divorce.
Divorce, yeah.
So you go to court and the court will say, how are you married? So you're married in committed property. And then the lawyers will say, everybody bring forth what you had.
This is where people hide their stuff.
Even when you are hiding stuff, we can go and investigate. And they say, where are you employed? They will write a letter to the trustees of your pension fund at work. And they say, how much money has been accrued to so-and-so? And yours, how much has been accrued? And if the other person did not have such a big pension fund, because it's one community estate, you have to share even your pension fund.
Do I look happy? No. Yo. Okay. So, it doesn't matter how old you are, ladies. It doesn't matter how old you are. These are things that you need to know. And if you are, for whatever reason, love took over and you didn't do this when you should have, you need to speak to your daughters. You need to speak to your sons, because even though we're saying this is women, because women are the ones who are, it's lovey-dovey. I don't want, or to say sign a prenuptial agreement and no, I don't want to sign. No, 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 no. You need to protect yourself. You need to protect yourself, not because you don't love the person, but really because you love the person is why you're doing this. And you need to love yourself. It's good to love, 100%. You should love yourself 201. But what about traditional marriages? How does this come in? Because I remember there was a time some years back where Muslim women who had married under what's that law? Not Sharia law. What is it? Who had the nikai, the Muslim marriage, and then the husband divorces them or the husband died, and they find themselves without anything. I remember a particular case. This woman was on 702, and apparently she and her husband had built up the business. She actually left her job to come and join. And when he died, the family came in and took over. They didn't acknowledge, not only did they not acknowledge the fact that she was part of this business that she had, they like totally cut her out of it. And then it turns out there was nothing in her name in any form, in any way, to show that she was part of the business. So women who are married under traditional, like if you have more than one wife, obviously you're polygamous, so it's not caught. What happens then?
So in South Africa, we have, in order to cater for what is called customary marriages.
Okay, yes, that's customary marriage.
Yes, we have a law that was passed, I think some 20 years back.
Okay.
Just over 20 years back, called Recognition of Customary Marriages Act.
Okay.
Which the intention behind that was to bring what is called traditional marriages, that is, marriages entered into by Black people in this country,
okay,
in line with civil marriages.
Okay.
So in terms of that law, when I get married in terms of customary law, that is, lobola is paid, there's all the African traditions that are followed, that law is also, that marriage is also protected under South African law.
Okay.
When I mentioned that, this law was passed so that customary marriages are also brought in line with other civil marriages. That law says that even customary marriages are also automatically in community of property. Okay. But we can still choose, even when we are married in terms of the customary law, you can still choose to say, what type of marital regime do I want to govern my marriage? Okay. Now, with Muslim marriages, there is no law that governs them in terms of South African law. So that is still in terms of the Sharia law. And that law says it is automatically out of community of property. Now, we must differentiate between a marital law and inheritance law.
Okay, we're going to go there now.
Yes. So the example that you're citing is, you find that there is a marital regime that applies, and then there is an inheritance law that says if you're Muslim, what happens if you pass away and you're a man or you're a woman, you are a man, you are survived by a wife, children, maybe a father, and what have you. That inheritance law is done in terms of the Muslim inheritance law or law of succession.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a whole topic on its own.
So yes. So those who are, and I'm just going to say this quickly, and then we're going somewhere. So those who are in a polygamous marriage, whether I can't say Christian now, a polygamous marriage, but they're not Muslim, which law will apply should the husband die?
It will have to be customary. Yeah. So in that case, it gets tricky because, so for instance, South African law says you will not enter into a marriage in terms of the Marriages Act and have more than one wife or more than one
husband,
which is, there's a term for it, for
yeah,
that, right?
Polyandry.
Yes, that's correct. So an African man who wants to take more than one wife, it will be the customary law route. And in terms of that, there's also laws that apply in terms of how are you married. You're gonna have to have.
Because I'm thinking you can't have community. You can't have your stuff together if you have two wives. If I say our stuff together and then our stuff together, which stuff are you talking about? If it's 3 houses that you have, so are those 3 houses for 1, 2, 3, me and the other wife and you, or what are we talking about now? Okay, yeah. So this one says, you say protect your interest, your financial interest. I think we've kind of talked about it now. There's something about saving and about our pension. Let me put it with pensions. Yes. Women tend to not save as much when it comes to pension, apart from, well, maybe the one that the company takes and puts away for you, as men. Because because women they have other things in mind. They're looking after the house. They're looking after the child. I want my child to go to this university, so I need to put 250 instead of 500 in my pension. I'm going to put 250 to the pension and the other to my child's school, whatever it is. How do we protect? So we're not making. There was something you said. You said we need to make heavy investment. How do we do that as a woman?
It starts with becoming literate or becoming educated about savings and about our finances. And I suppose if one looks at, at the trends, is that a lot of women or many women are the primary caregivers for their children. We are always putting others first before our own needs and interests. And so when it comes to having enough savings, when it comes to, I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, people are not taught on how to save. Financial education is very important. It talks to or looks at making sure that I've taken out insurance for my vehicle, for short-term insurance. I've taken out life cover. I'm not just relying on the savings that my employer is forcing me to make for my retirement, that I also make sure that I've got other savings on the side. And I think the main reason for that is that as women, we take care of so many people. I may need to be sending money back home to help look after my elderly mother. When it comes to household things, I'm always the one who's buying this and this and this. Also, because in times past, we allowed or we left the issues of finances to the men. And now that, we've got to take care of it, we just don't know where to start. And that is a problem, is that by the time you start, it may be too late. So we need to make sure that we get educated on interest rates. If I'm buying a car, how much interest rate is
fixed interest and
variable? Understanding.
I found out the hard way.
Yes. Finding out how much is going to be charged. Driving in here, I saw a newspaper advert that says, and I think is attributed to the governor of the Reserve Bank, saying that we're going to have to make some hard choices, and talks to the fact that maybe interest rates are going to be rising. Do you understand that if today I'm buying a car and the bank says to me, we're going to give you what is called a variable interest rate, that every time when the Reserve Bank increases the repo rate, that if the bank is saying we're giving you what is called prime plus 2%, and that every time when the Reserve Bank increases interest rates, mine also increases. So the cost of borrowing money increases.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to know things like, we need to be asking those questions. And we no longer live in times when, this information was not available. This information is publicly available. We've got to make the time to make sure that we read and we ask the questions.
I was just going to say that. It's the asking the questions. We don't ask questions. It's like when women go to the doctor. You see certain people and you think they are the experts. They know what they're talking about. And then you don't ask the questions that needs to be asked, So we need to ask the questions. I found out about that interest rate to it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. I'm telling you, it wasn't funny. Making every investment. You said something about July savings.
So South Africa, we have in July, many financial institutions, they encourage their customers and society at large to be saving. And it's been styled July Savings Month. And the reason for this is because research has found that South Africans are not saving enough.
Okay.
We're not saving enough money. We're not saving enough money for retirement. We're not saving enough money for a rainy day. My geyser bursts and I don't have insurance. People have got to go borrow money from a bank. Or I'm driving a car and one day I get a tire burst. I don't have money to pay for that expense.
Yeah.
And so it is about encouraging people to save money so that when I have an emergency need for money, I don't find myself going to borrow money, but I've got money that is saved up for such expenses those.
We had this conversation before we started, so I'm going to say it. We're going to have to talk about this because as much as the government says this is how much you should spend out of your salary on this and that, so many women and maybe men too are not able to save. Either not able to save what they would like or just cannot save. We have so many single parents. I'm one of them. We have so many single parents, either intentionally single parenting or life happens and they find themselves to be a single parent. By the time the bills add up or the bills come in, which has to be paid, there's like, how much is left? Where am I going to find this? So I think maybe we'll sit down and have another conversation on even the little bit helps. My helper said to me that when her son was so small, she noticed that he was smart, and she started putting 50 rand. I think she said 50 rand. She opened an account for him, started putting 50 rand every month when he was about 4. Now I think he graduated this week. And she said every year she paid his hostel and tuition at the beginning of the year, once off from the money that she'd been saving. Yeah. This is not a woman that went to school. So it's not about being educated. It's been about being literate in certain things. There's something like street smarts. And she said she's never had to borrow for his school or anything like that. And her husband, she was divorced quite early. So she's carried this boy, just the one child that she has. She's carried this boy through. And I was so proud of her. I mean, she's an old woman, but I wanted to oh my word, I'm so proud of you. You do this. Nobody told her. She said, no, she just noticed that he was smart. And she wanted him to go wherever he wanted to academically that she didn't able to. So how do we make that space? If, because sometimes I also think we look at 50 rand, but really that 50 rand at the end of the year, it might not be more, it might be just 300 rand, but it's 300 he wouldn't have had. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So in this country, we've got a wonderful concept called Stokvel.
Yes.
That many of us grew up on Stokvel money.
Okay.
Because, you come together with a group of friends and to your point, you say 50 rand. And every month you have an obligation to say, I'm going to put 50 rand in this account.
Okay.
Come January, we share the money and we take the money and we are paying our children's school fees. And this concept of Stokvel has been there for many, many
years. Oh, yes. We call it another name.
Yes.
Oh, you have we have it, but ours is not as regulated as South Africa. In South Africa, They actually have Stockwell communities. You go to the bank, you open an account. No, we have what we call it ajo, which is just, come together.
Yeah.
And basically what you do is you can be working in a new office. I look at people that you feel like, okay, we're sort of, I say, you just ask, do you want to do ajo?
Yeah.
And you say, yes, this is how much can you, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we do it very informal,
yeah,
but it's something that has been there for years. I remember growing up to see the old people who used to do it. Our grandmothers, there will be someone who goes around. So like your Stockwell, they take accounts and all of that. But now in what I say modern times, we just find a friend. Men do it, women do it, and it can be for anything. But I think mostly, I don't think we do it for continuous saving. I think we do it for like towards the end of year. I want to buy something. Okay, so come together. But now I'm in one right now. So I'm thinking, okay, I mustn't take that money and spend it at Christmas.
Yeah.
I mustn't spend that money at Christmas. I must put it away.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I mentioned this is because it's another form of saving.
Yeah.
Because what is really Stockwell about? Stockwell is about, one, that commitment and the discipline that you have made with yourself to say, I'm going to be disciplined and I'm committed to this cause. And I'm also making a promise to this group of people, 6 or 12 people that we're saving money towards. And that's what savings is about. It's about discipline. The English language is called, has got a phrase called delaying gratification. If I can delay consuming now for later, and I'm saving money every month, and I enjoy the money, or I'm able to buy that thing or have that thing later on. That's what savings is about.
Yeah, in this world of instant coffee, that's what I call it. Instant coffee, instant coffee. Can't even wait for the coffee to boil. But
yeah,
it's a lot of it's on sale, and I'm trying to teach my child that just because it's on sale doesn't mean you have to have it. You might not need it.
Yes.
But that's why they're making it like woo woo woo. It's on sale, it's on sale, it's on sale. And sometimes even these days you have to look at it's on sale. Really, how much have you saved? If you say buy 2 and you pay a certain amount, like what I wanted to buy recently, I think was shampoo. And if I buy 2, it's 175 rand. If I buy 1, it's 110. But that one shampoo, because this big bottle, it takes us like forever to finish using it. Why do I want to buy 2, which might even expire where we're still at it? So I really thought about it. I was I'm like, do we need this? The one that we're replacing, which year did we buy? It wasn't last year. So what do I need to buy 3 years in advance? So you need to even look at the things that are on sale. Some things make sense, but we shouldn't just because it's on sale. There's no way we're not gonna do this twice. But I want because we're not getting to wills and trust. We're just going to talk about one thing that came up that I didn't know, then found out. So we're just going to look at we haven't talked about death tax. I think death, you said we didn't have inheritance in South Africa, but we have not even looked about that. We haven't looked at trust. You setting up a trust. And please, I know we're female, and I know sometimes we leave this thing to the man in the house, but there are a lot of single mothers now, a lot of single mothers, young and old. And I think the younger we start, as well as a single parent, the earlier we start, the better. But something that came up wasn't what I was looking for or what I was looking at. But did you know that just because you're not around and you say this person verbally will look after my child, and the person, like, of course, I mean, you look after her. But if for unseen reason you're not around permanently, you're dead, you're not around, if you're not legally appointed, please correct me if I'm wrong. If you have not legally appointed someone to be your child's legal guardian, it doesn't hold. Please explain that to us. Because if I say, my sister will look after her, don't worry. And then.
So in terms of the Children's Act,
okay,
you have to nominate a legal guardian for your child in a will.
So you must have a will to be able to say, this is my child's.
Yes.
Okay.
But let me say this. You're talking about something that is very close to my heart. Women who are single parents.
Yeah.
We must distinguish between, I'm a single parent, but the father of my child is still alive.
Okay.
That person, by law, is a natural guardian. So if I'm no longer around,
as a natural guardian, okay,
he must assume the responsibilities.
And what if he doesn't want to?
What if he doesn't? Then this is when now you need to make sure that you get legal advice. You are guided by what you must do.
Okay.
And that's why the law says, if I'm a single parent and the natural guardian, that is the father, the other parent of the child is no longer around, then I must nominate a legal guardian in a will. But it is important that the legal guardian has also agreed, because looking after a child, in fact, looking after any other person comes with some financial responsibilities.
Yeah.
So the person must have agreed. You must make sure that they've got the financial means to look after the child. If not, you must have made provision that I've left, let's say, 1 million to look after my child for the next so many years, up until they have gone through varsity and they are now self-sufficient. So it is important that you, especially when you are a single parent and the legal guardian or the natural guardian is no longer there, that you've made provisions for someone to look after your child, and they've agreed to look after the child.
Okay. So they must agree. Again, this I found out. You mustn't assume, I think in an African culture, and then the way I grew up, my grandmother always had children in the house. I don't know who, some of them I knew who they were, some I didn't know. And my mother is the same. There's always somebody's child living with her, but she's not that guardian. That I know now. But I would have, I assumed, right, that if something happened to me, my child would be looked after by, not just somebody, but certain people. And then I found out that you actually have to ask, one, you have to say who this person is. Two, you have to ask that person, are you willing? Because it's not that they don't love you. And that's one thing that you said now. It's not that they don't love your child, but can they afford to look after your child? And even if they can afford to look after your child financially, I think it's just decency for you to actually say, this is what you're going to need financially to look after my child until a certain age. For example, I could say, I'll look after your child, and then my child is going to a private school, but I can't afford fees for 2 kids going to a private school. I don't want to deprive my child of the private school education. So I send your child to a good school, but a public school, and then it becomes, so that's what you're doing now. It's not that I don't love that child. It's just, come on, this is the way it is. And also one thing that I realized, if you write it, we're going to have to do this will and trust. We have to do will and trust separately, because if you're doing a will, you need to say, this is the kind of school I want my child to go. I've left the money for it. So don't take the money and go buy cows or something somewhere. So you need to be very specific.
Yeah, you
need to be very specific and very clear.
But also the one thing that I must mention is that I have got a certain way in which I'm raising my child.
Yes.
I must be happy that if I'm saying my brother or my sister are going to be looking after my child, are they upholding the same values that I uphold?
Yep.
That is very important. So it's not just about a question of finances. It's a question of the child's safety, emotional well-being, psychological well-being, being raised in a home, like as a Christian. Is my child going to be taken to church?
Yeah.
Are they going to be, led in
even the values?
Even the values. It's very important. So I don't think we should look at it as
it's not just the finances.
No, it's about the whole well-being of a child, being able to look after a child. But just quickly on the issue of trust, right? Yeah. I would advise that, if you are a single parent and you are having a conversation with family or friends, it's okay to even have conversation with friends that if I'm no longer around, that you're going to be the legal guardian. Please make sure that the money that you've left for your child is put safely in the trust. Because a legal guardian and someone who looks after the finances, you should make sure that
You separate
them, and you are safeguarding your child's financial future.
We're going to have another discussion about this, but may I say that there are banks in South Africa who actually do your wills for free. FNB is one. I don't know if Standard Bank does. Standard Bank do free, but you can find out, even if it's just a standard will, these are my thoughts. This is what I want, even if you want people to dance at your funeral. Okay, if you know me, you know that I will say I am very irreverent when it comes to death.
Yes.
For me, you die, that's it, you're gone. Bye. Yes. But so I won't say that. I don't want to offend anyone. So we are going to talk about trust and wills. And what I'm going to ask you to do, please, do you want us to have a streaming, a live streaming of this, or do you want it to be a pre-recorded one? We're willing to do both. We're willing to do either one, either to stream it so you can actually ask your questions live, or just a pre-recorded one, which means if you've got questions that you really want to ask as it concerns women, law, and finance, please send it. You can send it to me directly. My email address is at the bio page, or you can just put it on the comments. And yes, please subscribe. And I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.